China launches live-fire military drills in the Taiwan Strait, drawing attention from Taiwan's defense officials. Tensions in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait are a hot topic at the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Manila. Taiwan's drone industry is blowing up, but lawmakers clash over how much the country should spend on the sector. Plus, the cabinet proposes new amendments to help close up gaps after a major food safety scandal. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Tiffany Wong. China has launched a two-day live-fire exercise in the Taiwan Strait. As Alan Liu reports, analysts say the drill does not pose a direct threat to Taiwan, but it still warrants close attention.
China says it is hosting live-fire drills along its coast facing the Taiwan Strait from Thursday to Friday. The country's Maritime Safety Administration says the drills will run from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. each day in parts of the Taiwan Straits and the East China Sea. Vessels are barred from entering the exercise area. Taiwan's Maritime and Port Bureau says Taiwanese vessels will not be affected and can still access the island's ports as usual. Taiwan's Defense Ministry hasn't responded to requests by TaiwanPlus as of airtime. Some analysts say the live-fire drills are taking place far from Taiwan and do not pose a direct threat to the country. Yet they say Taiwan should remain vigilant.
这个地方虽然离台湾有200-300公里啊，可是呢，万一他借着这个机会，他暗中的调动可以射程打到台湾的武器，这个时候我如果没有掉以轻心，没有去注意它的话，我就没有办法及时的发现。
China has also stepped up military activity around Taiwan. Taiwan's Defense Ministry says 21 Chinese aircraft and 8 ships were operating near Taiwan between Wednesday and Thursday. 20 of the aircraft came nearer to Taiwan's main island. The developments come after a Chinese military helicopter crossed the median line of the Taiwan Straits on Monday. It's an unusual move that raised concerns here in Taipei, especially as the aircraft remain in restricted airspace near Taiwan for some time. Taiwan has already entered its military exercise season. The military has wrapped up its joint defense exercise last week and is now preparing for the annual Hanguang drill in August. It will continue to be on alert for more Chinese drills. Ryan Wu and Eden Lu in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
As the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Manila nears its end, some of the delegations are still watching China and its actions in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. John Ventrias reports.
U.S. and Chinese delegations sit across the table from one another in Manila, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in the center. This meeting, on the sidelines of the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, comes at a time when both sides have much business to discuss. Chinese President Xi Jinping is heading to Washington in September. There's planning to do. And there are also big differences to work around. China's clashed once again with the event's host, the Philippines, in the disputed South China Sea. China and the Philippines are among the countries with overlapping claims in the sea, and China has ignored an international ruling siding with the Philippines. The Philippines is a U.S. ally. Rubio says the U.S. will honor its treaty obligations. Then there is the ever-tense relationship between China and Taiwan. China regularly sends Coast Guard ships into Taiwanese waters to test Taiwan's resolve and challenge its sovereignty. Rubio says this is a constant issue, something the U.S. is opposed to, with the U.S. saying the Taiwan Strait should be open to all.
It always comes up in every one of our meetings because we obviously disagree with those actions. And we actually think that they run contrary to the spirit of what we're trying to work out with them with regards to strategic stability.
And there's a pending $14 billion arms sale from the U.S. to Taiwan. China strongly objects to sales like this. While on hold for now, Rubio says they're just under review as the U.S. takes stock of how much hardware it can spare. But it's not just the U.S. taking a stance towards China on the sidelines of this meeting in Manila. For Australia, a recent Chinese missile launch, and especially the South China Sea, are points of concern. It's giving the Philippine Coast Guard extra funding.
more broadly on the South China Sea. I also have made public comments about the incident involving the members of the Philippines Navy and the Chinese personnel. We have said we have real concerns about behaviour that is destabilising and risky.
China is not pleased, but doesn't name any specific countries when discussing the foreign response to recent tensions in the South China Sea.
有关国家不是南海问题的当事方，无权介入当事国间的涉海问题。
And then there are Japan and South Korea. In a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Rubio, the foreign ministers of both countries expressed concern about the same missile launch that's made Australia uneasy. They also agreed on the importance of peace across the Taiwan Strait. As the gathering of foreign ministers in Manila nears its close, China, and how to deal with it, is one of the issues some members face. As Rubio tells reporters, the goal is to manage differences, because a conflict, economic or otherwise, would shake the world. Devin Tsai and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
China and the Philippines have clashed once again in a disputed part of the South China Sea. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel shot a water cannon at a Philippine government fishing vessel near the contested Scarborough Shoal. The Philippines says China violated collision prevention rules, while China says the Philippine vessel intruded into its waters and carried out provocative actions. The confrontation comes after a violent skirmish near another shoal on Monday. The two sides summoned each other's ambassadors at the time, but their foreign ministers later met in Manila on Wednesday. U.S. House lawmakers have passed a record $1.15 trillion defense budget for 2027. The proposed budget is about 28% higher than the previous year. It includes funding to help Taipei bolster its self-defense capabilities, support for bilateral drone development, and a plan to bring Taiwan into the 2028 RIMPAC naval exercise. The final bill could still change as lawmakers work out differences with the Senate. Here in Taiwan, lawmakers are at odds with the cabinet over the budget for a drone industry development plan. Industry insiders and experts are voicing concern over what this could mean for the sector's future. Larry Asiano reports.
Legislative debates over spending are focused on Taiwan's drone industry once again.
The
cabinet approved a drone industry development plan worth roughly $1.4 billion, looking to expand market demand, improve technology, and refine regulations. The goal is to make Taiwan the center of a democratic drone supply chain, not reliant on China. China is the current market leader for drones, and many countries are seeking to lessen their dependence on its products. That presents an opportunity for Taiwan, if it can take advantage of it.
其中在市场面的部分，透过政府公务采购扩大内需，并以台湾卓越无人机海外商机联盟带动业者拓展欧美日海外市场，建立稳定且可预期的市场需求。
But the plan has run into a roadblock. On Wednesday, opposition lawmakers voted to freeze the full amount allocated for this year, after originally proposing to cut the budget altogether. Legislative approval will be needed before the funds can be unfrozen and used. Industry experts say this kind of legislative deadlock hurts the sector.
但是我们的电子大厂不愿意投入，当然除了一个是他们看不到有一个长期的可以有 sizable 的 order 一个量产。
业者在这个领域其实投入是相当多的，政策需要一个稳定长久的规划，让我们业者投入才会比较知道怎么去应对。在一个处于模糊的阶段的时候，其实会对我们业者在投入的评估会变得很困难。
Apart from the economic arguments, drones are vital to Taiwan's future defense strategy. They would help the country overcome its manpower disadvantage, keep shipping lanes open, provide reconnaissance, protect critical infrastructure, and more. What happens next is up to lawmakers, but whatever they decide will have a major impact on the industry's future. Justin Wu and Larry Siano for TaiwanPlus.
Following the recent tainted oil scandal, Taiwan has submitted amendments to food safety laws in a bid to ease public concerns. Aichi reports.
The government has proposed changes to Taiwan's food safety laws in response to a recent scandal where cooking oil was found to contain excessive levels of a carcinogen.
这一次的食品安全卫生管理法修正草案以强化源头管理、强化制程管理、强化异常通报、强化品质管理以及强化数位管理等5大方向为核心。
The amendments announced by the cabinet include tougher inspection requirements, expand traceability of food sources, and raise penalty for non-compliance to around $1 million. They also call for better mechanisms to respond to major food safety incidents that involve businesses, laboratories, third-party bodies, and government agencies. Locals in Taipei are broadly on board with the planned changes.
那这样子，我们在就是外面采买或是在使用的时候会比较放心一点。
正面看待，但是我觉得落实执行才是最重要的。对，要有真的有监督，不是只有修法。
Echoing those remarks, a legal expert said the added provisions could help, but authorities must enforce the updated law effectively.
看有没有办法正本清源去防免后续食安的再发生。我觉得土法不足以自行，法律不可能那么完备、那么巨细靡遗。那主管机关有没有办法积极去在他手上有的工具去做到？这反而是在心态上可能要我觉得是调整的吧。
The draft amendments will be sent to the legislature as the government coordinates with lawmakers across party lines to see the changes passed into law. Joseph Wu, Irene Lin, NIT for TaiwanPlus.
South Korea is banning dog meat next year, and the country's farms that breed dogs for human consumption are closing down. But animal rights activists want to know, where have all the surviving dogs gone? John Van Trieste is back with this report.
Until recently, these cages held dogs ready for slaughter. Elsewhere in this slaughterhouse south of Seoul are reminders of what went on here too graphic to show: deadly electric prods along with scattered canine skulls. In the past, dog meat was seen in Korea as a fortifying summer food. But since dogs weren't legally livestock in South Korea, there were no humane guidelines in place for their slaughter. Drowning, hanging, beating, and electrocution while still conscious, slaughterhouse owners were free to do what they wanted. Even the dog's feed was often just food waste. Animal rights advocates combing the site imagine what conditions must have been like.
The dogs here witnessed the entire process of dogs being slaughtered and dissected. Then they must have heard screams and smelt everything.
But times have changed in South Korea, and as the abandonment of this slaughterhouse shows, quickly too. The country has embraced keeping dogs as pets over the years, and in 2024, when the government announced it would ban the breeding, slaughter, and sale of dogs for human consumption, only a small minority of the country still ate dog meat. Even back at the abandoned site, animal group Korea Animal Rights Advocates managed to save 29 dogs and file a legal animal cruelty complaint against the owner. Once the dog meat ban takes force next year, slaughterhouses, breeders, and sellers of meat face 3 years in prison for violating it. The Agriculture Ministry says as of May, over 80% of the country's dog farms have applied to shut down. But there's an uneasy question in the air. What happens to survivors from slaughterhouses like these? The government paid breeders compensation per dog released, but never checked where the dogs went to. There was no adoption campaign. Animal groups inspecting slaughterhouses fear owners took the money and killed off all the dogs they could.
It is presumed that they were likely plucked, slaughtered, and sold away. Fortunately, the dogs remaining here were in good physical condition, and we had no choice but to rescue them, because they would have been at risk of being slaughtered had we not done so.
Any other dogs that might be saved by animal rights groups will likely have to find new homes overseas. Despite a growing love of pet dogs in South Korea, the breeds used for meat, such as the Korean yellow Spitz, tend to be large, not ideal for a country where the majority of people live in apartments. In the last 2 decades, another rescue group, CARE, has only managed about 24 domestic adoptions, despite sending thousands more dogs abroad in the same time. For those dogs that have made it out of the slaughterhouse, the future remains uncertain. Justin Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
In Hong Kong, residents can now dine with their dogs at restaurants for the first time in decades. Yvonne Young has this story.
Hong Kong resident Cecilia Chong enjoys a meal at a mall restaurant with her dog Jaden by her feet. That's something that hadn't been possible for more than 30 years until recently. New policies have finally reversed a 1994 food safety rule that kept animals out of indoor eateries for hygiene and rabies concerns. The change began this year when the Hong Kong government began embracing a more pet-friendly culture to tap into the growing pet economy.
It's perfect for everyone. We are happy and restaurants have more business. I think it's a win-win for everyone.
The process moved quickly. In under 4 months, Hong Kong's legislature went from proposal to policy, with more than 900 licensed restaurants welcoming dogs in early July. The city of about 7.5 million people is also home to more than 400,000 pet cats and dogs, according to government figures. And that's a major business opportunity, with one insurer estimating that pet owners spend more than $250 million a year. Restaurant owner Vanshika Sharma sees opportunity.
We already see in a day 2 to 3 tables outdoor for pets. Sometimes it's more. So if we open doors inside, I think it should just boost the business to another 10 to 20%.
Local resident Annie Lee brought her dog out to lunch.
The dogs are, of course, very happy. They love going to places with air conditioning. But perhaps as it is their first time here, they are a bit restless, and we would have to tell them to be calm. But so far, we have been eating for about an hour, and they have actually been very good and haven't made any noise.
Under the new rules, dogs get their own seats and tableware, must stay leashed at all times, and are not allowed on tables. Restaurants cannot serve dog food prepared in-house. However, the rollout has not been without hiccups, amid concerns over reported rule violations, including owners feeding pets with restaurant utensils. Friction with high-end property management has also forced some eateries to withdraw their pet-friendly licenses. One Hong Kong lawmaker, a dog lover himself, has urged owners to act responsibly so they don't jeopardize the new policy. For now, Hong Kong's dogs seem happy enough to follow the rules for the chance to eat out with their owners. Yuan Duan, Ted Chen, and Yvonne Yang for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, Taiwan anticipates new U.S. tariffs as the Trump administration finds fresh ways to pressure global trade partners.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app or follow us on social media. And by the way, this over here is drone soccer.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Another round of tariffs is on the way for major U.S. trading partners, including Taiwan. Our reporter Lily Matina has been following this story.
Taiwan could face fresh U.S. tariffs by Friday as the Trump administration looks for new ways to keep up the pressure on its trading partners. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says Washington will soon release a Section 301 investigation. It examines whether 60 trading partners, including Taiwan, have failed to address issues of forced labor. The probe could lead to additional tariffs of 10 or 12.5%. The investigations represent the Trump administration's efforts to find a new legal basis for tariffs. That follows the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to strike down Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs in February. After the ruling, the U.S. president used a different law to impose a 10% global tariff, but that measure is set to expire this week. The administration is now turning to Section 301 forced labor investigations to keep tariffs in place. Taiwan's government says it remains in close contact with Washington. Taiwan and the U.S. signed a reciprocal trade agreement in February before the Supreme Court ruling, and Taipei says Washington should consider those existing terms.
美方会考量各国达成的贸易协议。 我方也持续跟美方在保持密切的沟通，确保美方在做最终税率的决定的时候，会给予我国相对优惠的待遇。
Economists also point to the U.S.'s reliance on Taiwan's high-tech products and, most importantly, critical chips.
这些高科技厂商去美国投资，其实就是美国这个川普政府再工业化的最核心的精髓啦。那因此呢，我相信，在这个前提之下呢，台湾受到这个关税的压力呢，是不会比其他国家更严重。
Taiwan's government and businesses have already made plans for major investment in the U.S. Just last week, Taiwanese chip giant TSMC increased its total U.S. investment commitment to a record $265 billion. Taiwan, with its high-tech sector and investment commitments in the U.S., could face less pressure than some of its regional rivals. But the government and businesses will want to be doing all they can to ensure they get the best possible terms. John Su and Lily Lamantina in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
In a world dominated by digital screens, print media in Japan is making a major comeback. Self-published zines are booming among younger generations. Irene Lin takes a look.
Surrounded by the smell of ink and humming printing presses, 40-year-old photographer Obara Kazuma and his creative partner are here to check up on their latest publication. Without a professional publishing house, the pair has found editorial freedom and a niche younger fanbase through their rather old-school creation, a zine. Obara says print media has the power to bring people closer, especially in the digital age.
I think print media is incredibly open. You can hand it to someone, you can read it together. Phones, by contrast, feel like they are very insular. Everyone is each in their own little space, enjoying their own little world.
This printing factory in Kyoto has served more and more artists like Obara. While the traditional print media dwindles in number and sales, self-published zines are on the rise, all thanks to younger readers.
People in their 40s and 50s might even be the generation that calls them old media. But as I do this kind of work now, I'm finding that, surprisingly, it resonates with younger people in their 20s and early 30s. I even hear comments like, "It's interesting," precisely because it's old.
At this Zine Fest in Tokyo, some say it's nostalgia. Some say it's the sensory experience of the rustling pages and the smell of ink.
I simply love paper and books. I think AI and digital tools make it possible to create all kinds of things now. And the range of possibility is really broad. But with analog, there's this quality of having something that actually remains in your hands. And I found that really appealing.
The zine publishing market in Japan is estimated at over $900 million, and it has doubled in the past 4 years. Now, with a big Japanese bookstore chain putting zines on its shelves, the nostalgia economy of print media seems to be moving back into the mainstream, bringing people out to share what they love. Andy Xue and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
An artist in South Korea is gaining recognition in her homeland after decades of honing her craft overseas. The 91-year-old chainsaw-wielding sculptor is now inspiring a new generation of women artists in the country. Jeremy Olivier reports.
South Korean sculptor Kim Yun-shin gets ready to work in her studio. Her tool of choice, a small chainsaw, used to carve abstract works from the trunks of trees. Even at 91 years old, Kim is still going strong. After all, she's been doing this for most of her life, inspired by the time she spent as a child in the Korean countryside.
From a young age, nature was my friend. There was no one at home and no one in the neighborhood, so I played by myself.
In the woods near her home in what is now North Korea, Kim created an imaginary world. She witnessed the trees there cut down for fuel, something that drove her desire to begin recovering and transforming felled trees into works of art.
If you cut them down and throw them away, the trees just rot and disappear. But if you gather those cut pieces and transform them into sculptural art, they survive and exist forever. Perhaps, maybe I liked trees so much and hoped for that.
Kim's works are being featured in a new retrospective at South Korea's renowned Ho-Am Museum of Art. But the recognition she's now enjoying in her homeland is actually quite recent. The artist spent most of her career, nearly 40 years, in Argentina, drawn by the South American country's abundant trees, and seeing it as a way to escape the repressive atmosphere in Korea, then under the rule of a brutal military dictatorship. It was in Argentina where she took up chainsaw carving.
A saw can cut hard and create texture. Other tools can do that too, but this is powerful, and as I get used to it, it becomes one with me, allowing me to cut freely. That's something others can't do unless they're accustomed to it.
Kim's decision to pursue her passion in such a faraway land has drawn admiration back home.
I personally find that truly remarkable. The fact that she was drawn to Argentina without any prior ties, solely by the trees of Argentina. And it didn't end there. She absorbed the local culture, nature, ultimately shaping and completing her own distinctive artistic world. I believe this is the key point that deserves close attention.
With her trusty chainsaw and her newfound prominence in South Korea, Kim is blazing a trail for the country's women artists, showing that the costs of following one's life dreams is worth the reward of achieving them. John Su and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out this Austrian cyclist front flipping off a hot air balloon. He's the first person ever to pull it off. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.